Well, did Yelena put the pebble in your shoe? Pebble is definitely in my shoe. So what to say after this? It seems like, most of the things that she shared are in the same time answers, like, yeah, just go and sit in the feet, in front of Jesus' feet and learn from him. Take his yoke and you will be just fine. But we will, in this second session, try to see a little bit more practical life of each of us. And I love how someone has described our network, not our network, our workshop. And I will take the first line and start with that. It says, as women, we often find ourselves challenging to have it all, to be it all, and juggle everything with grace and beauty. Would you agree with that? Someone has really put that well. I don't know if this is Yelena's sentence. But I will start with that. Expectations are very high for women. And please be very aware of the expectations. It seems like we are just adding. We are not taking anything off the table. So for an average woman today, she needs to be if she's married, a wonderful wife. She needs to be a good parent. She maybe needs to be very well appreciated at her work. She needs to be a super athlete, exercises and dieting. She needs to be entrepreneurial, hard word for us, not from United States or UK. And also she needs to save the world. It's a very hard task that we as women put in front of ourselves sometimes. And we need to be aware of those expectations. What I want to say is that there is nothing wrong if we want to be better, if we want to go further, if we want to really grow. But what if I ask a question? For example, like a question, do I want to be a better parent? Okay, I want to be a better parent. Okay, so I go to the internet or I read several books on parenting. You get the ideas and all kinds of things, and you end up, please agree with me, you end up discouraged because you enter into all these beautiful ideas about parenting. What about this blog was written by a stay-at-home mom and she likes craft? And I'm not a stay-at-home mom. I'm in a very busy ministry and that is developing and growing. And I'm also co-pastoring a small new plant church with my husband and with 3 children. I cannot follow her examples of how to be a better parent. And I don't like crafts. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do them. And so that is what can happen to us. So our expectations out of ourselves are growing, but we cannot follow that. And then what happens to women is that we start to feel less confident as parents. For example, if I'm, tracking this example that I gave. And all the research are saying actually and showing that women struggle in the area of self-confidence more than men, and that many women feel confident only when they are perfect or close to perfect. So this has happened to me, really, to read a book about something that I want to grow in that area and actually to be discouraged after that. So what about if we start asking different kind of questions? Again, there is nothing wrong with the question, how can I be a better parent? But what about if we start asking these questions? Am I a believing woman? Am I a praising woman? Am I a woman of the word? Am I a humble woman? Am I a pure woman? Am I a praying woman? Am I a devoted woman? Am I a spirit-filled woman? I think that we should have expectations in these areas and to do something about that. We saw here what was the title, and Yelena really explained all about following and this lead to follow and also to lead others. But we all want to lead others well. You know, we are here at the leadership conference. Maybe you are young, but you are influencing people around you. So you are leaders. And also someone, even if you're really young, has trusted in your leadership potential, and you're here at the leadership conference. And we want to lead well, okay? So, first I want to say is that if you want to lead well, you need to first be led, okay? It's very simple, isn't it? So I will share this with you. I was led by Yelena. I was led to Christ by Yelena. She put my name on the list in probably November 1992. She prayed with a fellow believers, small group of believers, for courage, and I think, you know, for me to be open to receive the gospel when she shares gospel with me. So I was led in the beginning, and my privilege is that she was just speaking to us, and she's a wonderful teacher and a friend and a sister. And do you know that many people cannot come to Christ just because they're not willing to be led? And it's very hard for some people. But in order to lead later on and to lead well, you must be first okay to be led. If you don't know how it is to follow, and you are unwilling to learn from those who are ahead of you, you are not quite ready to lead. Please remember this. I was just last month at one regional women conference in Croatia, and one lady wanted to talk to me, and we sat down. She's from Hungary, and we already met once and spoke once, but that's the level of how we know each other. She's older than me, and she's involved in ministry in her church. She leads women in her church. And while we were talking, so she said a few times something like, "Oh, what you are saying now is so important. Thank you for sharing that. I am so encouraged with what you have just said." And I'm not saying this so that you would think that I shared something super wise, but actually I left this meeting with this older woman. I went home, well, to my room, changed, because I said to the Lord, I want to be this teachable. I love how she's teachable. I was just so under impression. So I guess who was the leader in this? She made an influence on me. She was the leader through her teachability. And also I want to share this with you, is that you need to love people before you can really lead. Okay. Sounds so simple, but very often we lead and love ourselves, and that's not really good way. And also this relationship with other people is not you, not me and you, but me or I and it. Have you recognized that before in your life? Have you felt sometimes like an object, like a subhuman? That is not the way how to lead anyone. it's almost like treating people like they are some objects that we can use, like they are cars. And it's very disturbing because they're people of great value to God, and we give to something else of value and not to people. So what can happen is, I will just give you a few examples. You can talk to your neighbor and listen to her problems only because you want her to come to your outreach in your church. And if she doesn't come, you're not interested anymore in her problems or to make any further conversation. Or you can come to your office and you work in a Christian ministry and you are overwhelmed with what needs to be achieved, the aims that we need to, to fulfill. And we are all about that, and we are not seeing the people. We are not saying even hello. We are planning and we are moving them in our plans. Again, not asking them for their opinions, even if that is involving their lives. It's really treating them like they're subhuman or, they are like objects. So great leaders love those that they lead. And they are thinking always how to move their followers to the next level. It's just so amazing because you can fail just because you didn't love a person and you didn't take time to really assess where that person is. Again, an example. If you have a certain task that needs to be done, and this person, you do not pay attention to who this person is and their qualities and where they are at the moment, and you just think, okay, I will just delegate and encourage. And that's a not loving thing to do to someone who needs instruction and coaching, and then later on encouragement and support. Or the other way around, you can, just because you don't know well the people, you are not loving them enough, you can do the other way around. You can, to a person that is really capable of doing the task by herself, or himself, he can do it, you can really direct and instruct and again bring a lot of frustration. So love the people that you lead. And of course we need to become servants before we can become leaders. We know that servanthood is the prerequisite to kingdom influence based on Jesus' example and his words. But we don't love to let go of that identity as leaders. And we have come up with even the saying or the term servant leadership. It's very hard to let go of this leadership part. So we are really challenged, all of us here, to lead well. And yes, we can lead without being led before, without loving people, and without being servants. But who would want that? Your reward for such a leadership is shallow and short-lived. Instead, we should choose a Jesus path, really, to be servant and a shepherd. So, just like in the previous session, just talk in your little group, or maybe just to one person, talk about this. Just talk about, try to answer this question. Am I teachable? Am I really interested in the lives of those people, of the people who are around me? And how would it change the way how I lead people if I saw myself first as a servant and then as a leader? The next thing I would like to talk to really is about people pleasing, about not being everything to everyone. People pleasing really affects the way you lead other people. It's a very dangerous for a leader to be a people pleaser. And I'm not talking about living a healthy, unselfish life where we make the needs of other people important to us. I'm talking about the pressure to perform, an unhealthy drive to be accepted and approved by others. This is a pattern in which we try to be who others want to us to be, isn't it? And we want to fit in. We want to avoid some of the reactions that we are afraid of. And this desire is so strong that it influences really and controls the majority of our decisions. And what do leaders do? They are making a lot of decisions. And it's very dangerous to make decisions when you are a people pleaser. And we will see that in the Bible. There are so many stories. It was very hard to pick up the important stories that, not important, but the stories that can really illustrate this people pleasing. First, if you remember in Exodus 32, when God has delivered people of Israel from the slavery in Egypt, and they were in their journey throughout, the desert, and Moses went to the Mount Sinai, and he was gone for 40 days and 40 nights. And people become very nervous and anxious. Can you imagine just 40 days and 40 nights? When I was reading this, I was thinking, poor Aaron. He was under such a pressure from this huge multitude of people. They desperately sought some reassurance from Aaron. And because this absence was so long, what had happened? He actually participated in building the golden calf because of the pressure that he felt from people. He wanted to ease their anxiety. And when Moses came down, he said to him, "What did these people do to you, that you led them into such a great sin?" So what were the consequences of Aaron fearing what other people would think instead of listening to the voice of God? How might he would respond different if he wasn't afraid of what other people are thinking? What if he remained deep and secure in the love of God? That day, 3,000 people died. And also the Lord struck the people with plague because of what they did with the calf Aaron has made. There are consequences when we are making decisions based on our fear from people, from men. Also, if we remember King Saul, and he was in Gilgal with the troops, and it says in the Bible, they were all filled with fear. He waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel, but he didn't come to Gilgal. And the men started to run away. They started to scatter. So he said, King Saul, which he was not supposed to do, he offered the burnt offering. And just as he finished making the offering, Samuel arrived. And he said to him, "What have you done?" Again, similarly like Moses was, "What have you done, Aaron?" And this is now Samuel saying, "What have you done, King Saul?" And he said, "When I saw that men were scattering, and you didn't come, and the Philistines were assembling, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me, and I have not sought the Lord's favor, so I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." Imagine the pressure. And he does what he's not supposed to do. Later on, just in 1 Samuel 15, they had clear instructions from the Lord, from Samuel, that when they attack Amalekites, that they would totally destroy everything, all the people, all their belongings, all the cattle, sheep, camels, donkeys, everything. But Saul and the army, they spared Agag and also the best of the sheep and cattle and fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. They were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak, they have totally destroyed. And again, Samuel had to rebuke him for what he has done. And now he's aware. He said, I have sinned. I have violated Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the man, and so I gave in to them. You have done a foolish thing, Samuel said. You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command. I mean, these are really grave consequences. It doesn't happen to us that when we make a decision, wrong decision, led by some pressures that we have from men, that 3,000 people die. But we don't see sometimes how grave the consequences are of our decisions that are made not to please God, but to please people. We have, of course, other examples, and I will just be very quick about this. How about Reuben? He was the one who wasn't so sure about the plan of other 9 brothers, but he was afraid. He was afraid to be the only one who is defending Joseph. So he joined them in the dreadful crime. Then we see in the New Testament when Paul confronted Peter for his hypocrisy in Galatians 2, for being afraid of what the Jewish Christians would think of him. You remember that. It's nice how Paul has said in Galatians 2:12, for before certain men come from James, so Jewish Christians, he, Peter, used to eat with Gentiles. But when they arrived, he began to draw back and separate himself from the Gentiles because he was afraid of those who belonged to the circumcision group. The other Jews joined him in hypocrisy so that by their hypocrisy even Barnabas was led astray. We must be very careful about really power of this pressure that people put on us and the fear that we actually have from people. And I think the author of the book that I read probably 5 or 6 years ago is here at the forum. I'm not sure, I need to check this, but I know when I read it several years ago, and the title is When People Are Big and God is Small. That's exactly what is going on in all these stories. But we are in search, and there are plenty, again, I'm thankful to God for that, healthy models. I mean, people in the Bible who really didn't fall under this kind of fear from people and under pressure of other people. And the freedom is really for us, all of us, to quit being afraid of what others think. First example is David, of course, David. And Yelena was saying a lot about King David. He's amazing. And in the 2 Samuel 6, we see him how he's bringing the ark of the Lord home to his own city, where he had prepared a tabernacle for its resting place. And he had forgotten everything in the delight of that moment. His wife, is it Micah? How are you spelling Michael? His wife, the Saul's daughter, I will call her Saul's daughter. She felt disgusted when she saw him. He was dressed as a common Levi. He was leading the way in the midst of the common people. And actually, when she came out to greet him, she was filled with furious scorn, And we see his reaction, It wasn't now, what can I do to please her now, and to do something about this. But actually, this led David to reaffirm and yet more plainly state his faith in God. He said, it was before the Lord who chose me rather than your father or anyone from his house, when he appointed me to be the ruler of the Lord's people. I will celebrate before the Lord. I will become even more undignified than this, and I will be humiliated in my own eyes. It's beautiful. Really, when we start to see ourselves, and this is what we have seen also through Psalm 139, when we see ourselves, when we have this new perspective, and I will repeat Yelena's words, God's perspective, divine perspective on ourselves, really, then we can, like David, sing this song of divine adoration. And actually, this will create in us, and this is from Spurgeon, I like this, this will create in us a proper disregard for human opinion. This will create in us a proper disregard for human opinion. He said this, in his worship, David did not allow the opinions of men to weigh with him. Men might judge him mad, as his wife seems to hint that he was, or they might condemn him as fanatical or extravagant. If any despised him in their hearts, he was not moved by that. For so long as he knew that his heart was right before God and that his worship was accepted to God, God's chosen servant is not the servant of man. Also, just to continue this, we see clearly that David, he is not seeking honor from people. And this is exactly what the King Saul was all about. That is what he was searching. And it's written in the Bible, and it's an amazing story. When Samuel told him all this, that his kingdom will not endure, and this is it, God has appointed someone else, he's in panic. He's trying to grab Samuel, and he said, honor me before the people. That was his great idea in his mind. Honor me before the people. Let the people think well of me. And I will quote how it is written. It says, O prophet of God, do not disgrace me in the eyes of the multitude, but let the people still have me in esteem. David did not search for the honor that comes from man. And also, if we think about Mary, when Jesus, and this is from John 12, when Jesus was visiting Lazarus and Martha and Mary, and when Martha, we know, served, and Lazarus was among those at the table with Jesus, but Mary took about a pint of a pure nard, an expensive perfume, and she poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. What do you think? Would she do this if she was thinking about what people would say if I do this? No, she wouldn't do that if she started asking those questions. But her actions really were not dictated by what is right in the eyes of the world, but what is right in the eyes of Christ. Christ's love and his forgiveness penetrate her inmost being, so she does not feel shame, she feels only gratefulness. Of course, there are people who would object that, and we read about that. You know, somebody didn't like what she did. You know, Judah, he said, why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. While we are considering all these texts, please think about your own situations. Of course, the greatest example is Jesus. Oh, people have different ideas about him and what he should be and what he shouldn't say or think or feel or do. We read that in his hometown, people were ready to kill him, to throw him away throw him from the cliff, off the cliff. Then we see that after he has performed some miracles, that people started saying, and I will read it, "Surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." And Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. Also about his family. They wanted to take charge of him because, they are saying he's out of his mind. And he had a clear, in his mind, calling, what he needs to achieve. If he started following, what people wanted him to do and their ideas, it wouldn't end well for us. Leadership is really hard. Please be aware of that when leader makes a decision, it's really, there are different opinions. Try to do something. Try to change something in your organization or in the church or in the university, something, I don't know, now in our church we will change our service from Saturday evening to Sunday. Of course, there are a lot of people who are for and a lot of people who are against. And there are always, after every decision, you will get a lot of different opinions. And if you are led by opinions, you are not going to go anywhere. And as I said, maybe we don't see when we make wrong decisions in our leadership that people die. But this is what happening. This is what is happening in our churches, in our Christian organization, and universities, if a leader is pleasing people and not pleasing God. Some of the things are really no one in the team is satisfied in that kind of church or organization. Why? And disloyalty is present there. And you would think, people will be loyal if, I'm as a leader trying to please everyone. No, because people do not trust people pleaser. Not at all. They very quickly learn that what leader says isn't necessarily the whole truth, but what will keep that leader popular. And this people pleaser says what people want to hear more than what needs to be said. And I will just say this, that if you want to achieve some vision, something that God has laid on our heart, I'm very passionate about what God has laid on my heart. But if that to be achieved, it's very dangerous to be led by people in all that. Because what is happening? Visions are intended to take us places. That involves change. Change is hard. People do not like changes. And if a leader wants to keep everyone happy, no changes will happen. And vision will not be, achieved. So by adulthood, really, until we are grown-ups, we have received, accumulated millions of messages, spoken and unspoken, about, from our families, from cultures. And these messages tell us what we should do, what we should be, what we should think, what should we feel in order to be loved and accepted. In the same way, it is really a process for us to rewire our brains to see ourselves as God sees us. And really, whatever may be your task, work at it heartily, says in Colossians, as for the Lord and not for man, knowing that it is from the Lord you will receive the inheritance, which is your real reward. So, as to God, that's how we are supposed to do all our work. So I will just, again, ask you to have a little bit of discussion. And that is maybe if you're ready to be vulnerable, and we love vulnerability, to think through and maybe share in your group if you if it recently maybe you have made some decision that is more under pressure of people, out of fear from people, and not really something that you have talked to God about that and was clear that it is from God. And also, what is one step that you can take maybe to quit being afraid of what others think. So please take your time. Okay, let's go to further topic, different thing that we are going to talk about now. And this is something that really, I've heard about this 2 years ago. And I was in Germany, and it was a women's conference, and this lady, her topic was quit dying to the wrong things. And I was like, I can go home now. Because really, it says it all, I immediately know that this is going to be quit dying to the wrong things. I was thinking, wow, this really created a movement in my life. And it's just this one presentation. Later on, I'm actually suggesting you to read her book, and that's the first book. It's Emotionally Healthy Woman. It's the name of the book that she wrote. But it was really life-changing for me to hear her speaking on this topic, quit dying to the wrong things. Because Jesus calls us to take up our cross and follow him. However, it is essential for the sake of our souls to distinguish between what we should and should not die to. For example, God is calling us to die to selfishness, but he's not calling you, to die to self-care. Many Christian women that I met over the years really lived unhappy, unfulfilled lives. They are involved in ministry, they love Jesus, but they are tired, they are frustrated, they are resentful. It leaks out through complaining, and they are angry. And they slowly burn out, wondering what went wrong. But they are dying to the wrong things. Dying to the wrong things, and I will read this, means depriving yourself of God-given gifts and pleasures that nurture your unique life in him. You die to the wrong things when you set aside or devalue activities that cause your soul to feel fully alive. When you ignore important relationships, when you care for others to the detriment of yourself, and when you fail to honestly state your preferences. Dying to the wrong things reflects a lack of self-respect and failure to grasp our personal dignity as made in the image of God. This can easily lead to a tragic distortion and misapplication of what it means to lay down our lives for Christ. And I think that she's absolutely right. We do believe that putting the needs of others in front of our needs means to die to ourselves. That's what we believe. And we assume, I did that for years. If a need comes, if need crosses my path, I need to do something about it. It's just God's will for me to do something. And if I don't, I feel guilty. For me, when I personally started thinking about, and this was 2 years ago, as I have said, I really want to say that probably there are different things for you. For me, it was this. I mistakenly died to my need of silence and solitude. In me, as a younger girl and younger adult, if you ask anyone in my family they know that these are the things I cherished. It's a pre-internet time. We had only 2 channels on TV which were not so good at that time. I was reading, thinking, reading, thinking. I wasn't a believer, so I cannot add praying. But I needed this time. This is something I cherished all my life. And that was gone from my life for probably over 15 years. Real, I mean, it's just, I was sad when I realized that. Also, I mistakenly died to my extended family. I love my family. I have in my city, and Jelena knows, my first cousins. And I know they love me, they love my children. Why am I not seeing them? I was watching a program about donor transplantation, organ transplantation. And I realized, okay, I would give a kidney to this first cousin, their children, and I am not giving 2 hours of my time per year. Do you see the paradox? And this is because of my commitments in the church, in my ministry. And my family, extended family, they are not believers. I think this is really something that shake me. As I told you, this was, when I just heard the topic, I knew that this will be a life-changing session in my life, because I was dying to the wrong things in my life. What about if you are married, and maybe your marriage is good, but you have died to a great marriage by mistake? If you as a couple have poured yourself maybe into loving people in the church and being over-functioning, maybe you have wasted the God-given joy of many years of great marriage. There is some sadness. I know. I had to repent for all the things that I have died by mistake. And there are some questions that we need to answer here. And I will leave you, we don't have to split in the groups, but just think about what nurtures your spirit and brings you delight. Some people love to spend time in the nature, outdoors. Some people love art, music, dance, reading. What is it that you have been mistakenly dying to? And also, really to assess very well, what are those things in your life? I'm very clear with what is in my life. And it's good that we can do something about it. We are all called, we are in the race, and we are all called to finish well. There are some kings in the Old Testament who started well and finished not so well. We have the example of King Asa, who really started well, did amazing thing, but he ended not so well. And then on the other hand, we have the story of King Manasseh. I hope I'm pronouncing it well, in 2 Kings 21. I mean, he has done all the evil possible in the eyes of the Lord, but he finished well. He repented. He, how it says here, he prayed to God, and God was moved by his humble request. And he heard his plea and brought him back to Jerusalem. And then Manasseh knew that the Lord was God. So we want to finish well our race. We want to finish well. And Jelena covered this very well. We need Jesus. It's that simply. We need to embrace this rest, and we need to figure out what this rest means in the Lord. Rest in the Lord. A few months ago, I have stepped down from the leadership position in my church, and it was a very tough decision. If you can only imagine something that it would be very hard for you to let go, for me this was a very complex decision to be made. I even talked to Yellen about this, and she shared this about, what did Jesus do? Could he do more than 3 years? And how long you are in the ministry and all this? So it was really helpful. But it was such a hard decision. And we don't like the word to quit. Would you agree that, quit? We love the word endure. Endure, sister. We don't love to quit. But actually, we have talked today about quitting, to quit being afraid of what others think about you, to quit dying to the wrong things and other things. And so it's not all too bad to quit. And I will gladly share you more about this. But when we quit some of the things for the right reasons, in the right time, in the right way, definitely we will be changed. I love the example of, how it all started. As I say, we want to juggle everything with grace and beauty. I read it in the beginning. So we are juggling so many things. And we keep adding, that we talked about that. We keep adding things, and we are not leaving some bowls, isn't it? And then it's too much. And I have seen burnout in my husband 2 years ago, and it is awful. And I don't want this to happen to me, to you, to women that I'm working with. So I don't want to see anyone pass through that experience. But when that happens, all the balls fall in the same time. So it was stressful for such a long time, and then indifference to everything, to God, to people, to church, to everything. Because everything fell down at once. So we are busy, we are juggling, we are trying to juggle with grace and beauty. But let's really think, what are the things that we are dying to that we are not supposed to, and what are the things that we should quit, and so on and on. I see the fruit very quickly of my decision. I see the good consequences of my decision. If you can imagine myself, my story, like just in the last 4 years, so my husband is not well. He cannot lead our family. He cannot lead our church. We had another child, baby, and I'm leading a pregnancy care center and actually teaching and training in other nations around Serbia. It's very tough situation to be, and also because my husband is not doing well as a leader, of course I had to be, there for the church. I'm his wife and his pastor, so it somehow fell on me. But what I want to say is just the other day, several days ago, I was working, I came back home, I took my child from a preschool, and I was playing with her on the playground. She just turned 4, and we were playing, and just my husband was leaving. He's okay now, back to the work, but he was going to the leadership meeting. I was so happy that I'm playing with my child at the playground. I'm not rushing from my work to leadership meetings in the church. I'm playing at the playground, seesaw and all those, things. I don't know even how to say it in English. I was so grateful that I got this new chance to start fresh and not to juggle everything. And it didn't fall apart, because it was the right time. It was in the right way. And first I thought maybe for 6 months. Now I'm not even sure that I will be back in the leadership position of the church with all the other things on my plate. But we will see that through the years. But think about what is that thing that is so valuable to you, but, assess if that is really what God wants you to do. I'm crazy about local church. I have to admit, that's why this was such a hard decision. And just, I want to be really, like David was, and to have this inward delight in God, and this will allow me more time, really, for my solitude, for silence, for time with the Lord, and many things with the family to really have this fellowship with my extended family, and everything else that I kept dying mistakenly for. And I just want to say for the end that when we feel really burdened with all the responsibilities of life, we should really run to Him because He can renew our strength. If you have ever asked yourself where does energy comes from, it comes from God. He says, I will strengthen the weak. So the one who creates the energy, He can recreate energy. And in Him was life, we know that. He will give life to you if you ask Him and live according to His will. And nothing makes us more tired than carrying around a bunch of things, bunch of stuff that you don't need to. And I just think I'm more aware of His presence on day-to-day basis, with all my responsibilities. And that's something that I would suggest. Just live your life, but being more aware of His presence. That He can help you even with your worries, with your responsibilities. He's there. You are not alone. It's like in Exodus 33:14, God was with His people then. He says, my presence will go with you and I will give you rest. So enjoy in that and pursue this intimacy with Christ. We have to be very intentional about that. It is not going to happen. We have to fight for it. We have to fight our busyness, isn't it? To have this time with Jesus. And sometimes we need to fight accusations. I talked to one lady from Serbia on our way here, and she said, I took a week off and I went to Slovenia just to have a week with my Lord. I'm sure that some people didn't like that, Maybe some people in the church would think, oh, she's traveling too much. This pastor's wife of ours, What is she doing, And remember that Mary was accused by Martha for pursuing Christ and wanting to be with Him. But really, go to a private place, write down, Yelena was talking about journaling, write down what you hear God is saying into depths of your heart and ask Holy Spirit to come and help you worship Jesus. And again, the line from the description of this workshop that I also like is, we want to be Wonder Woman, but how often do we drop everything to spend time with the truly wonderful one? Thank you so much.